Okay, you've worked hard to land the meeting, and the last thing you want is to waste the next 30 minutes asking the wrong questions. Top performing AEs agree on one thing. The best discovery calls aren't about running through a checklist, they're about digging deep into a prospect's pain before you ever pitch a solution. And so that's what this guide gives you, the psychology and the blueprint to run discovery calls the way that top reps do. And by the end, you'll know exactly how to structure your calls so that prospects see your product as the obvious solution, whether you're prepping for AE interviews or even running real deals. And so the Discovery Deep Dive walks you through the psychology behind why prospects buy, the 5-step blueprint, preparation, opening a call, the value gap sequence, next steps, and follow-up steps. And lastly, how to essentially leverage AI tools to make this 5-step discovery blueprint faster and sharper. All right, let's dig in. So, as I mentioned, this guide is broken down into two main sections, namely the discovery psychology portion and the discovery blueprint. The discovery psychology / background covers everything you need to know about the psychology of discovery, and then the discovery blueprint goes through the 5-step process I recommend to actually execute a discovery call. So just so you know, this is going to be a pretty long video. I'm going to go very in depth. The video will give you better insight into my thoughts. If you don't want to listen to the whole video, that's fine. You can download this Discovery Deep Dive in the Classroom tab of the free SDR Accelerator School community. And so, yeah, hope you find it helpful, but let's get into it. Okay, discovery psychology. This training will transform how you approach discovery calls. I think it kind of makes sense to think about what the end goal is before you actually execute on something. And so that's what I'm going to run through in the discovery psychology portion, is thinking through what is the actual ultimate end goal of my discovery call, and then how do we actually get there, okay? So again, this is the exact system top AEs use to help buyers see maximum value in their solutions. And the goal of this is to prepare you for AE interviews and your first closing role, as well as when you run discovery calls as an SDR. As the saying goes, time kills all deals. And so, yeah, we don't want to just be asking questions for 30 minutes on a discovery call. We want to come prepared and ask the best questions in order to get us to close one as efficiently as possible. And so before I get into the call itself, we need to ask ourselves the question, what gets a prospect to sign the dotted line? The answer, value. So how did we define value? I got this from Google. It's simply the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. And in regards to sales, the 3 components that create value are 1, being able to solve the customer's problems faster, solving their problems with less risk, and solving problems with less effort on their end, making it easier for the customer. And so this would get way too long if I spent a ton of time on this, but the reality is we don't really change these things, right? The product, these are things that are inherent to the product. That being said, when it comes to actually pitch your solution, which is at the end of the discovery call, it makes sense to think about these levers of value and focus on the levers of value that resonate most with your prospects. So if your prospect basically tells you, like, we want a solution that we can get up and running 3 months from now, you want to highlight a customer story and focus on how you were able to help customers solve something in a short amount of time, right? It's logical, but that's just something to think about. Okay. Like I said, the prospects sign the dotted line and become customers when they perceive the value of your product to be greater than or equal to the price that they're paying. You might need to pause, think about what that means. But the value needs to be greater than or equal to the price that they're paying, or else they'll never buy. And that's kind of how you make your decisions too. If you're buying a water bottle, you're not going to buy a water bottle until the value of the water is greater than or equal to the price you're paying. And a bargain exists, or the bargain exists when the value of your product is much higher than the price that they're paying. So this will, like, if you're willing to pay $1 for a bottle of water, but you can buy it for a penny, that is a bargain. Okay. If you're willing to buy a water bottle for $10, but the price is $1, that's also a bargain to you. So anyways, the larger this gap between the perceived value of your product relative to the price of your product will lead the customers to sign deals faster and with more urgency. So to we want our solution to be seen as valuable as possible. Also, if things go well post-sale, they'll tell all their friends and colleagues about your solution as well. So your job as a seller is to help the buyer see your solution as maximally valuable. This is important to note. You can't manufacture desire in your prospects or override fundamental human psychology. You're not God. Your job is rather to provide illumination. So I like this analogy. You're less like a bulldozer. You're not forcing things inside of them like some of those corny, like car salesmen, uh, YouTube gurus are. I won't name names, but you're more like a light bulb, right? So you shed light on the current problems, shed light on what the future could look like, and shed light on how your solution could help. You're just revealing the problems, putting them in the spotlight, and then highlighting how your solution can help. Okay. The more clarity you can provide to the problems your customer has, the more valuable your solution will look. Therefore, before you can ever pitch your solution, you need to understand their pain. Otherwise, you're throwing spaghetti against the wall. Many junior sellers do this. I used to do this all the time. I felt the pressure to like show how awesome my solution is, but I go on blabbering about features that aren't relevant, and I sound like a typical salesman, and I sound like an idiot. Okay, so this ties into a very popular sales framework I learned at MongoDB, named Command of the Message, and it was developed by Force Management. You can Google it here on the PDF if you want, or click the link. Okay. There's a lot of information on the slide. We want to focus on the bluish and purple components. We don't have to worry about these yet to orient. Okay. Current state. That is where the prospect is today. And as a side note, all these things are in the customer's language. These are not your language, so keep that in mind. Their problems, inefficiencies, and challenges. Negative consequences are the downstream negative effects of their current state, ideally quantified. And again, we'll get into more of these definitions, but just in the following examples, but just bear with me. Future state, where the prospect wants to be in the future. Outcomes, improvements in ROI, and then positive outcomes are the good stuff that they get as a result of achieving the desired state right here. And then required capabilities, is the prospect's shopping list of what they believe they need in order to get from A to B, where they are in the current state to where they want to be in the future state, right? Okay. I'll use color coding below to help make more sense of this. Okay. And the way that works, the prospect is often pretty aware of their current state and desired future state. Your job is to flesh out the negative consequences by asking good questions and understanding the negative consequences of their current state, and then also using questions to understand what the positive outcomes might be from the desired future state. Okay, so that is the value gap. The value gap is the difference between all the good stuff that happens after the problem gets solved and all the bad stuff that's happening as a result of the current situation, right? So I won't even try to explain it because I have a picture that I built on Canva to show it better than I can use words to describe it with. Something to note, you don't create the value gap, right? These things already exist. Remember, you're not God. All you're doing is helping the prospect see how large the value gap is. So through effective discovery, you can expand this perceived gap. The larger the perceived gap, the more aware a prospect is that they need a solution. Ideally, your solution. And therefore, the higher likelihood they buy from you. And here's an example. Okay, many sales reps stick with just future state and current state, right? Relatively small value gap. Now, if you ask good questions and understand their negative consequences and positive outcomes, you are expanding the value gap. You get a larger value gap. The customer becomes more aware of how badly they need a solution to get to bridge this gap, right? You're looking for your solution is the bridge of the gap. Okay, you can see the importance of gathering negative consequences and positive outcomes in order to build a larger perceived value gap. Okay, so it's kind of theoretical. I wanted to use a very simple example. So I chose a B2C example just to make it as simple as possible. So instead of a business, we have Mrs. Magoo. You're a sales rep for a roofing company. So she has a leak in her roof. And so you're on the phone with her. She's aware of her current state. And so and that's basically what she tells you is going wrong. It rains, the water starts to leak on the ceiling above me, I'm losing all sorts of sleep, right? So she may not be as conscious or aware of her negative consequences. So as she tells you about her current state, you don't go straight into her pitch, right? You wait before pitching, and instead you ask questions. Something like, how much water is leaking through? How soon until you get another leak? What do you think it would cost you to replace the ceiling? You're thinking about other things that could be happening, right? Because then she's not just replacing the roof, she's thinking about the ceiling. You think about mold growth. How much sleep is she losing? Yada, yada, yada. So she may not know the answer or may not be thinking about the answers until you ask them. As you ask them, she's forced to think about these questions. As a result, she becomes hyper aware that the longer she waits to fix her roof, the greater chance she'll also need to replace the ceiling. She might need to pay for mold removal. And the price starts getting out of control quickly. Then she starts thinking more about what her lack of sleep is costing her. And there you go. You brought the underlying issues into focus, the negative consequences. So again, these things always existed, but by asking good questions, you actually you start putting the microscope on all the bad stuff that's happening, which uh, makes her feel that pain a lot more and makes her realize it's a basically way to create urgency or highlight urgency is a better way to say it. Okay. Next, you move on onto what what she'll get out of the fixed roof. So you just ask simply, "Hey, what do you think this could do for you?" Uh, or I guess, why would it be good for you if you could fix? What did I say? What do you think it would do for you if we get this thing fixed? If we get this thing fixed for you, this roof fixed for you? She said, "I'll be able to sleep much better at night, knowing that if it rains, my house will be safe from the damage. My retirement is tied up in my house, and it's worth a lot to me." Boom, that's her desired state. Is her house will be safe, and she'll sleep better, and it protects her most valuable asset. Okay, positive outcomes. Remember, this is all the good stuff that all the good things the prospect gets as a result of achieving the desired state. So we want to ask questions basically as follow-ups to what she tells you here. How much you think your home value will increase by replacing the roof, right? Starts thinking about, now she's thinking about the future and then also all the good stuff that happens as a result of achieving it, right? Once you start sleeping better, what will that do for your life? Have you thought about how long this next roof will last you? All of a sudden, Mrs. Magoo is now thinking about all the good stuff she'll be experiencing on top of having peace of mind as a result of this replaced roof, which includes an increased home value, the ability to work on other home projects, the bandwidth to focus on her children, and the added benefit of not having to deal with a roofer for the next 20 years. Positive outcomes. Okay? So then lastly, we need to understand what Mrs. Magoo wants and needs, need to understand her wants and needs, aka required capabilities. This is, remember, as a reminder, her shopping list of what she requires in order to get from point A to point B, where she is today to where she wants to go. Mrs. Magoo, one last question. As you're shopping around for different roofs, what exactly are you looking for in terms of color, material, timeline, yada, yada, yada? And this is where she'll tell you her required capabilities. She wants it done in the next week or two. She wants a jet black roof. She doesn't care about the material as long as her roof won't get damaged by hail. Boom. Nope, need to make that bold. We have her required capabilities. So let's rewrite everything specific to here. I won't go too much time here because I've already read a lot of it off. But current state, hole in the roof, water's leaking into the ceiling, negative consequences, all these bad things, right? Replacing the ceiling, the mold, the difficulty in taking care of her children because she's not sleeping. Where does she want to go? She just wants to have a roof where doesn't have to worry about the rain, and she doesn't want her largest asset deteriorating in value. But the positive outcome is with a new roof, the value of her home actually goes up because yeah, people will pay more for a house with a new roof. She can get extra hours of sleep, and it can actually focus on other projects and take care of her children. And then she can also avoid the stress of having to deal with roofers calling her all the time. And then these are her required capabilities. She wants a hail-resistant roof, a black roof, and finished in the next week or two. So now that you have all these bits of information, you'll want to clarify, summarize everything she said, and leverage the value gap to position your solution as the cure. So remember, contrasting the negative consequences and the positive outcomes. Negative consequences, positive outcomes is the way to build the value gap. So, Mrs. Magoo, I just want to make sure I understand everything you've told you so far. At this point in time, uh, every time it rains, you notice that, boom, current state, and then you summarize negative consequences. Do I have this correct? Yes. And again, I'll go through this fast, but you can download this in the description if you want to study this more. And I understand you uh, want to have peace of mind, future state, and then you list off the positive outcomes. Do I have that correct? Yes. And then if you don't have it correct, she'll correct you, and then you can just like rephrase it again until you guys are on the same page. It's always good to check in with your customers or prospects to make sure you're understanding them. Boom, glad we're on the same page. And this is what you think, and this is what you require. Is that correct? Yep, that's right. And then she says, is this something you can do? And then basically you tell her, I can get someone to give you a complete quote. We have a variety of shingles to choose from, right? You're acknowledging her required capabilities. And then here you go into a customer story. This is really powerful. I'll talk more about this in the later sections of this PDF, but you basically say, we actually service one of the homes in your, I mean, you don't lie, but so this needs to be true, but we actually serviced one of the homes in your neighborhood just last month. They had a lot of wear and tear from the old roof, and we're also getting water on their ceiling. We were able to come out that the same day and have the roof replaced in under a week, and she even left us a 5-star review because we did such a good job. What does your calendar look like for us to come out there this afternoon? And see. Okay, so do you see how compelling your solution looks? You've demonstrated empathy, you understand her situation, you also put, like I said before, a magnifying glass on all these different things, and you've shown her how your solution can bridge the gap. And then you did so using a proof point, right? Proof points are great because they build trust. It help when you tell a story, it takes things away from the intangible of like, can this roofer fix my house to, oh wow, this roofer already finished in my neighborhood someone else's house and did so in under a week and it got a 5-star review, and then you can go point her to the review if she asks for it. So it builds trust. Just to highlight this, the benefit of the value gap going, I'll use 2 examples. One example will be this versus this here below. Talk track A is the one where you have a pretty small value gap. You just say, when she tells you about the roof, because you didn't do any good discovery questions, you just say, hey, Mrs. Magoo, sorry to hear you have a leak. We can definitely come out there and fix your roof so you don't have to get water leaking through. We can get you a quote today. How does that sound? That's probably what a lot of roofers are like, and that might be fine for some, and I'll talk about that here. But what sounds better, that or this? Hey, Mrs. Magoo, so sorry to hear you're losing all that sleep and getting water on your ceiling. I know you're really worried about the cost of mold and a new ceiling, in addition to the price of a new roof. And we'd love to help you get sleep and peace of mind back, and even help you increase the value of your home. I can send some guys out there this afternoon. We can show you a sample of different shingles, colors, and can actually have this done in the next week if that's what you want. Are you free this afternoon? Right? You are able to give all this context because you ask questions first. And so, like I said here, of course, there's a decent chance Mrs. Magoo would say yes to both options. But what if she's thinking about just paying someone a few $100 to patch the roof instead of replacing the entire thing? I think it's obvious that talk track B makes her far more likely to desire a new roof. And so I just wanted to highlight, you can basically create a lot of urgency or highlight a lot of urgency in the exact same situation when you do a good job of understanding everything that's happening. So, yeah, most people are bad at this, and this is why it's a chance to differentiate yourself and close more deals. Okay, applying this to B2B sales. So instead of a 20K roof decision, now picture Mrs. Magoo is actually a VP deciding on a $200,000 software purchase that could save our company $2 million annually. All right, same psychology, bigger stakes, more stakeholders. In B2B, you're still building value gaps, but now you're doing it with CFOs instead of homeowners, and the numbers have more zeros. So the fundamental psychology remains the same, which is people buy your solutions when the current situation is too painful, and then they buy from you when they see your solution as the bridge to their future. So the I would say the major difference is just the scale is much larger. You're dealing with more stakeholders, and you need to basically do what we call multi-threading, which is reaching out to multiple people in the accounts to basically build this sort of value gap. And yeah, I mean, it takes a lot more knowledge and effort to understand the business's current state, negative consequences, desired state, positive outcomes, yada, yada, yada. But that's also what makes this job so fun and financially rewarding. And so just remember that in a B2B situation, you're selling to a business. And one other major differentiator between B2B and B2C is that a lot of account executives chase deals that never close because they've spoken to a nice prospect who told them about all the problems, but the AE never learned if these problems actually matter to the business, right? So if the company, if your problems that you learn about aren't aligned with the top priorities of the company, the deal will never close. And so here's just a simple example. Uh, if you're trying to save a business $100 a month on their website and you know you can do it, but the business leaders are more focused on advertising and paid ads and know that they can capture $10,000 a month in profit, and they're putting all their focus on paid ads, even if you can save them $100 on a website, like you're not gonna capture the attention of the decision makers. And so, um, like even though you're solving a problem, if you're not solving the most important problem, that it's very, very unlikely that you'll close anything. And so, always be asking yourself, how will what I'm selling make a significant impact on the business that I'm reaching out to? Okay, I know it's a lot so far, but let's keep going. Um, okay, what is a discovery call? A discovery call is simply an initial conversation between a potential customer and a salesperson. Its primary purpose is to understand the prospect's challenges, goals, and needs, allowing the salesperson to determine if their product or service is a good fit and build a foundation for a potential future relationship. So, as you can see, the aim of a discovery call is not to get next steps. The aim is to understand if your solution is a good fit. And we do this by asking questions, expanding the value gap, and then working with the prospect to decide if your solution can or cannot bridge this gap. If your solution could be a good fit, then the next steps come quite naturally. If it's not a good fit, next steps are a complete waste of time, and it's good that you part ways sooner rather than later. Quick note, uh, this is something that's you should just be aware of. If your product is very complex and there's lots of people you're selling to and it's a larger business, it's okay if this process takes several discovery calls to get this information. Um, as with all blueprints, it makes it seem neat and tidy. And so, the hope is that you can get all of this information in one call, but if not, that's okay. Also, as you get more experienced, you'll get better at asking uh, better questions and getting the information that you need faster. Okay, now you understand the why effective discovery works. Let's actually dive into how to execute it. You'll get basically the exact prep methods, opening scripts, yada yada yada, that help build compelling value gaps. Okay, 5 steps. AI enhanced preparation call. Thank God for AI. It makes it easier, uh, just as long as it doesn't actually replace us all. Um, Opening the call, the value gap discovery sequence, disqualifying or selling next steps, and then AI enhanced follow-up. Okay, and we'll go through these steps. So, yeah, if you want just this template, it's pretty long. I also have a separate download for that, which you can download with this link. I do recommend you either listen to this video or at least go through the in-depth portion first. So, like I said, AI has made this a lot easier. I personally highly recommend Grok because it's free and there are workspaces that you can create within Grok, kind of like GPTs on ChatGPT, but you have to pay for those. Perplexity is actually like a superpower at doing in-depth real-time research. So Perplexity is great as well, but they have a pretty low number of data queries. That being said, honestly, any LLM will work, and whatever your favorite one is, whatever you'll use the most and is easiest for you is what you should use. So if you choose to use GPT or a workspace, that's advised because you can do something like this where you create a workspace that can be used for future use. And so I would copy paste this entire portion through here into a workspace. You can read through it, but it basically defines what these things are current, desired, required capabilities. And then you're just basically asking it to put you in the customer's shoes. What does their daily schedule look like? And help me understand how the business makes money. Then you want to ask it for an in-depth hypothesis for the prospect's current state. All right, this is just a hypothesis, but their current state, future state, and RC, required capabilities. 10 potential discovery questions that you can ask, and then 4 is just a summary of all these things. One sentence for each of the following categories: how the business makes money, what the prospect state schedule looks like, current state, desired state, RCs, and 3 best discovery questions you can ask. And then you also just prompt it with, hey, make sure I give you the name and title of the prospect as well as the name of the company they work for, and make sure I give any extra context leading into the call, such as pain points, core focus, line of business, right? So this is just the why, like I just explained. And so again, in your workspace, you can create project instructions. You just copy paste those there. And then, right, this is something you'll have every single time you ask a query of it. So these things don't change. And then, oh yeah, and then here, sorry, my prompt should always look something like so. I'm a sales rep I'll use MongoDB and have an initial discovery meeting scheduled with so-and-so at such and such a place, or sorry, with the title and such and such a place, and then any extra context you have about the call. Okay, so mine was, I'm rep at MongoDB. I have a meeting with John Smith, not a real person, manager of software engineering for the VOD, the video on demand line of business at Comcast. Okay, and boom, it starts spitting out all this information. I didn't screenshot all of it just because in the interest of length for this document. And then here are from bullet point 3 that I asked. Here, 10 discovery questions. That's what you get here. And then, oh yeah, one thing to note, a lot of these questions may not be relevant, so you can ask Grok for more questions. Use whatever questions feel natural to you, but it's just a way to start getting inspiration. And then step 4, remember, was just a 1 bullet summary. So all that information is good to read through and gives you a good perspective, but it's too much to like having your pre-call prep notes. So I like having section 4 just to copy and paste. So, on that template, I said you can download the discovery discovery call template. You can just copy paste. You can create a template before every single discovery call you have, and then just copy paste this at the top of the template so that you kind of have front and center the research beforehand for your customer. And then of course you can edit these questions with questions you really want to ask if you want. Okay, step 2 is opening the call. I would always try and hop on the Zoom call at least 2 minutes early if possible so that you can be in the right mindset. So look at the pre-call hypothesis and be ready to execute. Phase 1 is rapid rapport building. And yeah, I mean, keep it short and high level. I've had reps where they like spend 7 minutes talking about the weather and it's super cringy. And maybe it's because they're nervous or whatever, but just like get to the point and then setting the agenda. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read through all this. Go ahead and download it. But I love this and it's very logical. And you're essentially just introducing yourself, showing what you do, telling them the purpose of the call, and then you're giving them an out where you're saying, we'll either talk about logical next steps or part ways. Does that sound good? And then wait for their response. And then you ask them to basically tell you about themselves. Okay, now we get into the value gap discovery sequence. Okay, phase 1 is current state and negative consequences. So like I wrote here, this is the meat of the discovery call. You want to spend most of your time understanding the current situation, as this will help you uncover the negative consequences like we spoke about above. And remember, this is where you want to dig in. So you do this by asking open-ended questions, and in order to get to the root of what the prospect is telling you and the root of what their issues are. And just keep asking until you understand the problem. So Don't pretend like you know. Ask until you understand. It will go a long way in terms of building your credibility and showing that you're honest. And then you also want to understand what they're doing today, what's going wrong, and understand what else they've tried so far. So you can ask questions around that. When it comes to starting with your discovery, it often makes sense to actually start with the reason they gave you towards the end of step 2, which is right here. Right? You say, I would like to know what made you take the call today. And so your first answer can be, uh, tell me more about whatever they just told you. And remember, in this phase 1 portion of the discovery call, this is your goal. Understand the current negative consequences. I broke this up for simplicity, but of course this is going to be dynamic and you're going to go through all these phases at once in the discovery call. It's just a way to kind of break up your goals and like give you some order and sequence to the discovery. Anyways, here are some samples. Like I said, you usually want to start with why they said they took the call. Then you want to understand what they've tried so far to solve the issue, who else is involved in the process, what other challenges are you facing. And these are all just like, you wouldn't ask these in a row. These are all just like kind of like an initial question to ask before you ask follow-up questions. And then every time you ask one of these, you kind of want to ask follow-up questions until you really understand it and can try to quantify pain. So how is that affecting your role? Remember, how is that affecting the business? And you can straight up ask, you don't have to use that language, but you can even just say, are you able to quantify the impact that it's having on bottom line revenue, churn, whatever you want to ask. Uh, yeah, profitability, etc. Like I said, ask these follow-ups for each individual problem. And then, after you ask all these questions, make sure you echo back everything you've heard, right? This will show the prospect you're listening to them and will show you understand their problems in their business. One of the most common reasons people don't like sellers is because they often think that sellers don't understand their business and are just trying to collect a paycheck. Both of us, we are trying to collect a paycheck, but the best way to do that is to understand their business and understand the customer. Okay, so this is ideal situation. Of course, it's gonna be rare you get all this on your very first discovery call, but it's good to have your like objective, right? And so like on the discovery portion of, or on the current state and negative consequences, remember this is where you should spend the bulk of your time on discovery calls because uh, it's the most important thing to flesh out and will help you understand their pain most significantly. So in an ideal situation, you're talking to a software engineer and they tell you they're having issues building new microservices because their current database doesn't offer enough flexibility. And then through your follow-up questions, you've learned that they keep missing new release deadlines. And so they're losing prospects at a rate of 20% on the software platform that they're trying to build. And on top of this, because because the software engineering manager's team hates working with older technology, the best engineers are leaving to better companies. And so they're losing 1 to 2 average engineers per month, which is costing the business 900,000 per year. Okay, so that's of course ideal, and that just like boom, then you have negative consequences, and you can build a pretty strong business case just off of that. Okay, then phase 2, you want to go to the future state. Again, this isn't a 50-50 split. You're going to spend most of the time on current state and negative consequences, some time on desired state and positive outcomes, and then some time on required capabilities before you tie it all together. Okay, so this is where you help the prospect envision their ideal scenario, quantify the value of achieving it. You want to understand where they want to be and then dig into all the downstream positive stuff that comes as a result of that. So more aspirational than concrete. Like I said, you'll be spending more time on current state. The ultimate goal of this section of the discovery call, understand the different desired future state and positive business outcomes. Okay, so here could be simple questions. Okay, what if we could maybe wave a magic wand and solve all the problems it described? What would the ideal situation look like to you? Walk me through what success would look like in the next 12 months. What would be different about your day-to-day, etc. And follow-up questions could be, how would that impact your team's performance? What would that do from the revenue savings savings perspective? So you're like quantifying all the good stuff. Like you fix this, you have your dream world. What other good stuff happens after you achieve your dream state? What other markets could you expand to? Honestly, this might actually supposed to be. I'm gonna, as I read that should probably be here. Honestly, because I'd say their initiative is kind of more of their um, is more of their like future state. Anyways, so after asking all the questions in step 2, make sure you echo back to the prospect everything you heard. This will both show the prospect you're listening to them and will ensure you understand their goals in business. So, um, understanding a good future state with the potential MongoDB customer, right? So the future state, they have an ideally have a flexible database that allows their team to build microservices quickly, hit their release deadlines, and which would reduce customer churn from 20% to under 5%, which would actually result in $2 million in retained revenue annually, right? And then additionally, with modern technology, they could attract and retain top engineering talent, saving the $900,000 from above that they're losing in churn. And um, this would enable them to actually, you know, ship features out much faster and also hit those deadlines, which would, on top of like all these good things, actually be able to focus on hitting new markets, which has an estimated $5 million in new market opportunities. Okay, so it's like all the good stuff that happens once their problems get solved. Okay, phase three required capabilities. So this is where you uncover the prospect's shopping list, essentially what they believe they need to get from their current state to their desired future state. And so you want to understand their evaluation criteria, their must-haves, their nice-to-haves, any constraints that they're working within. Remember, this should be captured in the customer's language, not your language. And so as you become more skilled and knowledgeable in your product, it actually does become possible to ask questions in this portion of the call that make your solution look more appealing and maybe even plant doubts in regards to your competition. So if you're selling a premium solution and you have a feeling that the customer has very like expensive and robust requirements in their solution, you can ask a lot of questions around how intense is this application going to be? Like, like so it's gonna be pretty large. Like, how large is it going to be? That way, if they start giving information about like how that this application that they're building is going to be very labor intensive and resource intensive, and you know that your solution does a good job in that realm, then you can already write that down and like use that to combat why they shouldn't go with a competitor who might be cheaper but doesn't perform well in high performance high performance situations. If that makes sense. So, anyways, the ultimate goal: understand the required capabilities and evaluation criteria. So, sample initial questions might be: so as you think about solving X, Y, Z, and solving where you are today to where you want to be, what do you think that you'd need in a solution? Right? Let them tell you. When you evaluate potential solutions, what are your must-haves versus nice-to-haves? What criteria will you be using to decide which technology you want to go with? Yada yada yada. What does your timeline look like? Whether timeline technical or business constraints I should be aware of. And then, just your classic follow-up questions. Okay, you mentioned this. How important is this feature compared to this feature? What's driving the timeline? Why does it have to be done by this amount of time? Who else will be involved in this process? Um, you know, have you looked at other solutions? Of course, you might have covered that in the current state, but like, uh, you can dig a little bit more into like what else they've done so far and like why it hasn't worked. And then, what would you need to do? What would you need in order to feel confident moving forward with the solution? So understanding their required capabilities. And again, echo everything back. Again, you want to show that you're listening to them. And so, good example of a required capabilities discovery is the software engineering manager now tells you they need a database that offers a flexible schema. They have design and a design for rapidly changing application requirements. It can scale horizontally to handle their growing user base, maybe across countries. Timeline-wise, they need something implemented within the next quarter to hit their product roadmap, and they're not too worried about budget, but they do need to justify the investment to the CTO. So, and right here, they need seamless integration with their existing AWS infrastructure, right? So, fortunately, this is something Mongo can do, but if they said, you just want to make sure you have everything checked off that they need so that, when you build a business case out, you can actually prove that you can do it and like check off all the boxes of their requirements. Okay, so then I know there's a lot of summarizing that takes place, but it's honestly very important. So once you gathered everything together, you want to summarize everything one last time. You can just be like, okay, so let me just make sure I understand your situation. You're currently list out their current state, and this is costing you ideally the quantified negative consequences. Your goal is to get to here, and achieving that would allow X, Y, and Z. and produce XYZ income. Is that an accurate summary? Anything else you'd like to add? At this point, you've actually built the value gap right here, right? You have the positive outcomes on top, the negative consequences on the bottom. Scroll up to the image in the first page to see what I'm talking about if you forgot. And right, you have the value gap. And so the next thing is basically to understand the required capabilities of what they believe they need to get from here to here so that you can pitch your solution as the bridge. Okay, great. If I'm understanding you correctly, in order to get from where you are today to where you want to go, you need X, Y, and Z, the required capabilities that they just told you. Is that an accurate summary, or is there anything else you'd like to add? Of course, we expect them to correct you or add context here. You might have messed something up as you were doing your active listening, and then it's a great chance to clarify. So, after they have all that, you have finally earned the right to pitch your solution. If you're watching this still, I want you to see that if you pitch your solution sooner, you can kind of come across as tone deaf, and you really can't, especially if you have a complex solution, but honestly, any solution. If you don't know what problem you're trying to help them solve, you sound like an idiot if you try to like tell them how awesome your product is. And so you don't want to be focused on your product. You want to be focused on their solution and then just showing them how your solution can get them from point A to point B. Okay, disqualifying or selling next steps. Now that you have the value gap and the required capability summarized, you should have enough context to either disqualify the customer or sell the next steps. If you're not sure, then try to get next steps. You'll become more and more confident as you go on. But as a side note, that's why in discovery calls, it's often nice to have a solutions engineer because they help a lot in that situation. So if your solution does not seem like a good fit for the situation, then you just give them the talk track. Hey, I told you at the beginning of the call, like we said, I don't want to waste your time. I actually think for these specific challenges, we're not a good fit for reasons X, Y, and Z. And then I actually recommend you look at a competitor, or if it's not a competitor, just a different product for whatever problem they have. You'll build goodwill here. They'll be amazed that you're honest with them because you won't sound like every other seller. And in the future, they very well might come back to you for business when you can't provide a solution to their problem. If your solution does seem like a good fit for their situation, which is obviously the hope, hey, first name, thanks for sharing all the information with me. I actually think we could be a good fit for what you're looking for. One of our customers was in a similar situation. Boom, deliver proof point, and then suggest 1 or 2 times to meet. So proof points are the best way to sell next steps. So I should say, oh yeah, so sorry, the bulk of this section right here goes into that. And how to deliver proof points effectively. There's tremendous value to the customer in proof points, and as I've experienced myself, there is risk if you deliver proof points poorly, or if you use one that's not relevant. So, what is a proof point? A proof point is a specific, credible piece of evidence that validates your claim and demonstrates your solution's ability to deliver the outcomes your prospect wants. Right? So, honestly, it's really a story that helps the prospect understand how you can help them. Stories, if you are not aware, or maybe you are aware but you haven't been able to articulate it, they really do capture the attention of human beings in a certain special way. And it's probably because they engage our emotions, help us build connections to make sense of the world, and help us see things in a new light. So any story has a problem, a solution, and an outcome, right? If I just told you a problem, that doesn't sound like a story. If I just said, there once was a young man who was bullied for being weak and skinny, the end, that's not a story, okay? So weak boy story, problem, solution, outcome. There once was a young man, a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away, who was bullied for being weak and skinny. The young man then hired a personal trainer who lifted with him 3 times a week and built him a custom dieting plan. Outcome: within just 6 months, the young man became stronger than all his bullies, and they left him alone after that. Wow, it's a fairy tale, dream come true. Okay, now you have that story in your back pocket. Now let's say you're a personal trainer, and you meet a young man named Charles, and he's getting bullied for being too skinny. And do you want to help him? Which of these options below do you think will get him more likely to work with you? Let's see option 1. Hey Charles, you're getting bullied because you're simply too weak. You just need to work with me 3 times per week. I'll help you hit the gym, eat better, and then people will stop bullying you. Do you want to sign up? Why would Charles trust you? It just sounds like you're just trying to get money from him. And then here's option 2. Hey Charles, I'm sorry you're getting bullied, but I actually don't think things need to stay like this. I heard the story of another young man who also used to get bullied for being skinny and weak. But he didn't let the bullies get the best of him. Instead, this young man hired a personal trainer who started lifting with him 3 times per week and also built him a custom dieting plan. After 6 months of hard work, the young man became stronger than all his bullies, and they left him alone after that. Would you want to like work with me to see if we could do the same thing for you? Right? This story, it just builds credibility. And so option one might work if you're someone Charles already trusts, right? Like a father or a close friend. But what if you're a complete stranger to Charles, like you are with your customers, and he has no reason to believe what you're saying? Can you see that option two is far more likely to get Charles to hire you? Stories, as I mentioned above, provide evidence and build credibility in a way that direct claims cannot. So it's the exact same with our exact same way with our prospects. They don't trust us yet. Stories help them to do so. And then one more thing to note, they're only good if they're relevant to the prospect. So now in the hypothetical world that we're living in, picture a young woman, Susie. She's getting bullied because she's ugly. What if you told Susie the story about the young man who fixed his bully problem by hiring a trainer, and then you tried telling her that she needs to hire a trainer because she's ugly? It probably wouldn't do anything for her. And as a matter of fact, she'd actually probably get really annoyed at you because you clearly demonstrated that you don't understand her problem. And so, same way with our customers, the more the prospect, I'm laughing because one of my first times I tried to deliver a proof point, I'm selling MongoDB, and he told me about his problem, and I was nervous, so I shared a customer story about one of our customers who solved their problem with MongoDB, but it was a completely different problem. And then when my AE saw the recording, he was very nice about it, but he just like we just laughed about how useless that story was. So, anyways, the more the prospect can identify with uh, the customer in the proof point, the more conviction you'll have as a seller. And so this makes sense, right? Because if you have a strong proof point and you can see exactly you can tie the strings together for how your solution has helped customers in the past, it'll give you a ton of conviction in how your solution can help the customer right in front of you or the prospect right in front of you. And so the more likely the prospect will even want to work with you. And so therefore, the most compelling proof points are the ones that highlight the customers in a similar industry, in a similar line of business with a similar problem. And so if you don't have a relevant proof point, just don't deliver one. All that to say, if you want to become a top-notch seller, you better learn the proof points relevant to your prospects, as it will go a long way. Okay, delivering proof points and setting next steps. So again, this is after you've gone through phase 4, you've summarized everything, their current state, their future state, their required capabilities. Then the next thing is, hey, I actually think we could be a really good fit for what you're looking for. One of our customers, Travelers Insurance, was actually in a very similar situation. They too faced delays in policy management system updates due to the rigid relational schemas they had on Oracle as well, which was costing them an estimated $500,000 annually in extended development cycles and missed market opportunities. They were actually looking at different NoSQL databases and ended up landing on MongoDB. And by adopting MongoDB's flexible document model and it enabled dynamic schema changes, which reduced development time by about 30% and saved approximately $150,000 per year while helping them meet project deadlines. And so I actually think it would make a lot of sense if we could just to at least explore if we could help you the same way we helped travelers. And so based on how we typically work with customers, I actually recommend we set up another session with our solutions architect to dive a bit deeper into your technical requirements, verify if MongoDB actually can, meet all those required capabilities you guys mentioned, and also maybe discuss budget as well. Do you have time for something like this, either tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern or Friday at 12? And scene. Okay, so it sounded just so you know, obviously what I was saying sounded pretty technical, and that's fine as long as it's in the customer's language. So you can use jargon as long as the customer understands the jargon. Obviously, simple language is always better, but in the database world, all these things make sense, right? And dynamic schema changes, the customer will know what that is. So just make sure it's in the customer's language, and then they might give you objections. That's fine. They might tell you. It's often that they'll be like, "Oh no, I want to sync internally, and then we'll get back." It'll take me about a week, and then if they say, "Okay," if they say, "Yeah, If they say they need to talk with someone else before they can schedule or before they can meet again, then just schedule time that they after they say. So if they say, yeah, it'll take about a week, they're like, okay, great. Well, let's meet next week at the same time as today. How does that sound? Boom, lock in the time. So as you can see, we make the proof point simple and to the point. One sentence around the problems, one sentence the problems that the customer had, one sentence around the solution, which is you, and then one solution around the outcome, or one sentence around the outcome. And then one thing to always ask yourself, it can be like stressful to figure out what should my next step be. Just think through what would make the buying experience as pleasant as possible to your customer. That's what your next step should be. So it's less about how do I drag this person along and convince them to stay with me. It's how do I make this as easy for them as possible to decide if to use your solution or not. So that's how you should think about it. Um, Work with your AE beforehand is another tip I have on figuring out what the ideal next step would be. So think through what do you think would be the best thing for the customer? What would be the best thing for the solution that you're selling? Like for you guys for an engagement model, how do customers typically buy? What would make what would produce the highest chances that they would buy from you, and what would make it easy what would make it easy on the customer in terms of buying experience? So go for that. Honestly, though, oftentimes your customers have their own way of doing things. They might need to review with a legal team first before they can meet with you. You can't really before they can meet with you again. So like, or before they can evaluate your solution. So like, you can't overcome that objection. You can't just be like, oh no, you don't need to meet with legal team. It'll be fine. Like, no, if they have to meet with legal, they have to meet with legal. And if that's their internal process, then that's fine. You could try to suggest a meeting a day beforehand, before the meeting with legal, just to like, help prep them for that, for how to like present your solution in a way that legal would not be turned off by it, but you get what I'm saying. And then, as always, do your best to set next steps as soon as possible. The longer the touch points between you and your prospects, the higher likelihood that the deal falls through. And last but not least, AI enhanced follow-up. I imagine most of you guys are using AI to some degree in your to analyze the transcript from your discovery call. It can be used for just analyzing your own discovery skills, filling out CRM notes, and drafting up follow-up emails. I imagine most of you watching this are doing this. Maybe, and less of you are probably doing this, and even less of you are doing this. This is underrated. It's good to put yourself under the microscope, and it's good to let your manager see it, but this is a little less like a little less like uncomfortable way to review your own skill set is to ask AI instead of your manager because your AI won't judge you. One of the benefits of Sir Grok or ChatGPT or whatever. So just like I recommended above for the pre-call discovery, you can also use AI for the you can also sorry you can use a Grok workspace for the post-call discovery. So what I recommend is throwing all these things into a Grok workspace, and it should look like so. And then you can just upload your post-call transcript, right? So you'll probably save it to your downloads, and then slap that into Grok, and then the instructions are already here. So all you have to do is upload the transcript and hit enter, and you basically pre-prompted it, so it'll just spit out all the stuff. It'll give you the summary, it'll give you a rating, it'll give you tips, it'll give you best estimate, likelihood to close. It'll help you summarize the questions that the customer had, concerns they had, action steps for both parties, and then draft a follow-up email. That's not too pushy or too long. So, and you may not like the output. That's fine. You can adjust. Like you may not like what it spits out. If you don't like what it spits out, then you can just change the instructions so that every time you'll get more aligned to what you want. And I sometimes you can edit things in here like um, if you have sizing on in terms, or should I say like different price packages, you can also ask like based on what the customer told me, like what do you think the estimated cost is going to be for a solution like this? Um, so that's kind of cool too. Like at least where I'm at MongoDB, there's different pricing tiers or it's consumption based. So based on how much data the customer has and the number of transactions per second or per minute that you're dealing with, you can throw that all into Grok and it'll give you a napkin estimate or a rough estimate of what it might cost on your solution. So you can throw that into the CRM as well. So I would not send that to a customer because things could, you may not have all that information, but as an estimate for like Salesforce and tracking opportunity size, it's a pretty crude way to get a good estimate. So, one more thing to say is, I know there's more and more solutions coming out for AI in terms of like during the call. So I actually wouldn't be shocked if there are like, actually, I know there are solutions being worked on right now to help prompt sellers with the right questions to ask in the middle of a discovery call, so that while you're talking to the customer, at the top of your screen, you might get a suggested question to ask. I don't know. I suppose that could be really helpful, but I also feel like that kind of dehumanizes it, and I feel like AI might actually like not ask great questions, but I could be wrong. I mean, I guess if it's well trained on what you need as a seller, it could be good. But I'm rambling. Thank you for your attention. If you made it all the way through, hope you found it helpful. If you have any specific questions, as always, feel free to hop on a Q&A session. We do those as of right now every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central. It changes from week to week if I have something going on, which I try to block that time off. But of course, things come up. I got a family, so I try to do at least 1 hour every Saturday. So always check the calendar. And but yeah, at least as of now, it's like not every 9 a.m. every Saturday at 9 a.m. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to join the Skool community as well. Or if you're not already part of it, ask questions on in the general board, etc. And people or myself will be happy to help. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.